Honourable Minister of Culture.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise today to speak to the third reading of Bill 9, the Protecting Choice for Women Accessing Healthcare Act, and I do so proudly. And I say proudly because I'm not afraid to have my position on this very important subject matter on the record. Now, I suppose that I could avoid the issue altogether, either by not speaking to the bill, or perhaps running out of the House and hiding when a vote is recorded, as we witnessed a few minutes ago. But I have no issue whatsoever standing up for women's reproductive rights. Now, as a male, I will never be faced with the choice of having to make a decision of this nature. And admittedly, it is much easier to say you are either 100% against or in favor of a woman's right to choose when you will never be the one in that position of having to make that very difficult choice. However, as a feminist, I feel it is my responsibility to stand up and defend a woman's right to choose, especially when others, much to their shame, choose not to. To be clear, for me, the question is not about being either pro or anti-abortion. The question for me is this: who should be able to make that decision? Is it the woman with the help of her doctor or the government? I think, and I speak for the members of this government, that the question is very simple to answer. It should always be the woman who chooses. Decades ago, women suffered through horrifying back alley abortions or used dangerous methods when they had no other recourse. So when there is any hint of opposition or any implicit attempt to limit a woman's reproductive rights, or in the case of the UCP opposition to boycott the debate altogether, I really have to ask, does anyone really think that pushing women back to the back alley is a better outcome? I find it offensive that the UCP opposition has chosen to boycott any debate on this piece of legislation and has opted instead to abandon the legislative duty that they were elected to do and not vote time and time and time and time again. Truly shameful. Fortunately, we live in a country where the issue was settled by the courts, and women in Alberta and across the country have the right to choose. In fact, January 28, 1988, the Supreme Court found that Canada's abortion laws were unconstitutional. The laws were found to violate Section 7 of the Charter of Rights and Freedoms because they infringe upon a woman's right to life, liberty, and security of person. The then Supreme Court Chief Justice Brian Dixon wrote, and I quote, "Forcing a woman by threat of criminal sanction to carry a fetus to term unless she meets certain criteria unrelated to her own priorities and aspirations is a profound interference with a woman's body and thus a violation of her security of the person." On that date, Canada became one of the small number of countries without a law that restricted a woman's right to choose. And I take the opportunity today to congratulate the people of Ireland who recently voted to repeal an amendment that bars a woman's autonomy over their bodies. I bring this up because, like many around the world watching the historic vote in Ireland, I learned of the hardship faced by women there having to travel out of their country to freely exercise their reproductive rights. And that is why I stand here today in this chamber to tell the women of Calgary Cross, my constituents, and women across this province that I will stand with them, and so will every single member of this government. Now, based on the research and the reading I have done on this issue, it is very clear to me that absolutely nothing is more important or more imperative than ensuring a woman's fundamental right to reproductive freedom, and that nothing is more odious and offensive than denying a woman the respect and the ability to live in a society in which they are encouraged to think of themselves as anything less than first-class citizens and responsible human beings capable of making those kinds of decisions for themselves. And in doing so, ensuring that women have confidence to exercise their autonomy over their bodies. Now, that autonomy can only be freely exercised by ensuring that women can access those services in a safe and dignified manner. Shortly after the government introduced this legislation, members of the UCP caucus chose to walk out of the House, an action which has been described by some, and I quote, political cowardice and a disgraceful dereliction of their duties as MLAs. In fact, members of the opposition went in front of the media to claim that the reason they left the chamber was due to the heckling coming from government benches. I am certain the kind of double standard and political game playing by the members of the UCP opposition is not lost on anyone, because the very thing that they allege to need, a bubble zone protecting them from the heckling, is exactly the very same thing that would deny the women of Alberta. It is truly shameful. They would stand and still allow protesters to make women feel ashamed for the choices that they made. That, Mr. Speaker, is the pinnacle of irony. And while I have much sympathy, compassion, solidarity, and empathy for the women being subjected to derision by protesters, I have none for the members of the opposition who choose not to stand up for the women in this province. This bill is one that ensures dignity, equality, compassion, and respect for the women of our province. And that is why I stand again in this House today to say to every single one of my sisters, your body, your choice, and I stand with you.